Morning and welcome to the Good Morning Education Show this morning. Welcome to a beautiful new week and the start of another school term, another uh, school school run, and having the children back to school. My name is Nichiro Paulo, and I welcome you this morning to the Good Morning Education Show. This is where we have topics re- surrounding education issues, and sometimes we go outside of that. We welcome everyone joining us from different parts of the world, and we'd like to know where you're joining us from. So please, in the comment section, let us know where you're joining us from. Share like say that you share the link with your network, share with your friends, let people know what's going on here. Let them know that there are discussions and around topics relate to them. So we will start off today's show with the headlines from the world of education this morning. What's in the news? What are we seeing? What are we reading about education in the news this morning? Before we go on to taking the topic of the day with other analysts joining in on the show, and we take our topic today. It's an interesting one, I must say, and it's one that takes care, well, as usual, of the welfare of every student. It doesn't matter what level of education they're in, environment. This topic applies to them. Okay, let's take a look at the topic this morning. Uh, how investment in Shellfish Bank will create employment opportunities, boost foreign earnings in Nigeria. Dawn. Okay, so we have investments in Shellfish Bank. Okay, how this creates employment opportunities. Anything that creates legitimate employment for the youth, for school leavers, for young people in this country is a welcome development. It's one that we embrace fully, and um, all of these opportunities we look forward to them. There's so many people churned out of schools these days, and they're out and join the pool out there. So this is one that we readily welcome. University. Since government and management lack such powers, a prescription of unions by the school management. Then just last week we were talking about the new disruption in school calendars seeming to come from management, and this is just another one this week. We hope it doesn't continue to this does not continue to be the narrative that we have conquered as it seems. We have conquered the issue of strikes and having students out of school because of maybe stuff they caused or they were not even a part of. Now, management issues seem to be the front burner news uh, from schools, from institutions to institutions. This should be handled, and let's for once show that we can run a system that works. Let's not forget that what students learn from the institutions of higher learning is what they replicate in the society and the larger society. So if we cannot prove that a school session can run smoothly without issues from management, issues from students, issues from all sorts of staff unions, then what exactly are we saying about the larger society? Do we have the right to complain about government? Let's get it right from here. Um, Another headline says insecurity fueling school apathy, increasing dropouts. UBEC boss for boy. Yes. Um, Last week too, we had the news about some students who escaped being kidnapped, and some staff. Think of a university in the northern part of the country, I believe. And really, when this started, and it was secondary school students being kidnapped, we saw the effects it had, especially in those areas on school attendance. Definitely, where children are not sure that they would go to school and return home, and parents are not sure that the children they're sending to school will be coming back home to them in one piece and alive and well. Definitely, they want to keep those kids out of school. And there is no time that this insecurity would not resolve in dropout. In some twisted ways, some may feel, oh, why do I even need to stay in school when there are people who are doing these things and getting away with it, and they're even making money from it, so why stay in school? We really need this insecurity handled, tackled, and let's all let's have at least the assurance that stepping out of the house to get an education is not becoming an extreme sport. It's not becoming something that, oh, I'm putting my life on the line, either for the students or for their parents. Yes. Moving on. Okay, so that is the last headline we have for this morning. And moving on to our topic for today. And our topic says, Leave no child behind. Leave no child behind. How are we leaving children behind? Or maybe I reframe that and say, Leave no students behind. Because there are students who are not, well, in the category of children anymore, and they're left in environments. What does it mean to leave a student behind? What does it mean to leave a child behind? Every classroom is a mix, is a melting pot of different categories of students. Some are fast learners, some are slower learners, some, learning styles are different. While some are visual, some prefer uh, the logic part of learning, figures, reading. There are different types of individuals in a classroom, in the learning environment. And if care is not taken, some of them might be left behind. The teaching styles of a teacher, or maybe the learning style of a teacher, sometimes affects the learning environment. So if a teacher is more of maybe a visual learner or a musical learner, more tended towards the use of music and sounds, they are more likely to use the style in their classroom and leave behind students who are not this inclined. So, what does it mean to carry everyone along? Is it even possible to carry all the students along? Is it possible to carry every single learner along. These are things we'll be considering this morning, and these are topics we'll be considering this morning, and that we will be talking about. Also, when it comes to behavioral defiance, before going to that, Gochi, good morning.
Good morning, Fee. How are you
Okay,
doing? How was
welcome
your
to the show this
weekend?
morning.
Thank
I'm
you very
very
much.
well. It was fine, thank you. How was yours too?
It
I
was
hope you had
beautiful.
some rest.
Yes, I did. I did.
Great. You're welcome to the show this morning, and we're talking about leaving no child behind, leaving no learner behind, leaving no student behind in the learning environment. When it comes to leaving a child behind, how can a learner be left? It's like we're all at the bus stop, we're about to board a vehicle, and maybe some are not as fast running to catch up with the vehicle and they'll get left behind. How does this translate to a learning environment? How can we leave a child behind? Which are you there? Gucci, she's not. Network issues. We did not. Which will be joining us again very soon. But that topic, or the question I asked her about leaving a child behind, this can we can see this, or it can be manifested in different ways. We can see it either in assessment. I believe when students go through exams or tests, and then you see there's a particular child always coming up, taking the last positions or towards the end of, they're almost always last in class. This could be a signal that this child is not catching up well with the others, or that there's something that is not being passed across, or they're just not getting something. And yeah, last week we talked about classroom size and how it affects teachers. If, for instance, a teacher has a very large classroom size and they keep having a maybe a little number that are not catching up with the others, going back to take this child or to pull this child along may become a little of an issue, considering, oh, I have all of this other work to do. But then we cannot leave them and say, oh, well, if majority are getting it and they're just the two or three students who are not getting it, then I have done my best and I'm moving on. There's the need for us to find out what exactly is going on. Could it be that, that there's some children who they just, the close up, when it comes to other getting involved in group learning. But if you were to sit with them one on one, they're likely, or they're more open, or you find out that they actually know what you're asking them or what you want them to do. But in a group, they're not doing very well, and this may have to do with maybe their temperament, maybe they're kind of person. A very shy child feels, look, I don't want to talk, I don't want to be put on the spot, which happens a lot in classrooms. Sometimes, out of, yes, we want participation, the child is put on the spot, which is not well, for a child who has that kind of temper, or their personality is a type where they're a lot more laid back, or they don't like to be in the spotlight. how else can we involve them in learning? How else can we involve them in learning um, without their personality feeling attacked or being feeling like "Ah, this is it's taking me out of my comfort zone." These are the things that we are considering and talking about this morning. Um, Children with disabilities, with reading, with figures, how are they carried along? Are there needs for, yeah, since we're raising a lot of questions, do we have more needs for instructional materials that are tailored to specific type of learners? How, at what point do we stop using instructional materials? Because I'm thinking, for example, in the university system, so we have children post through from primary to secondary, and then you get to university level, and it looks like, look, at that point you're on your own. You learn. You're just dropped in the deep end. Sink or swim is left to the student. Is there a need for instructional materials at this level? Considering that there may be students at that point, at that level, who maybe just struggled also to get there. They're not really learning optimally. But then here they are, and they still need to be able to assimilate, to learn, to get the best of what's going on in their classroom. So, taking this discussion further, I would say that first, it's important for teachers to understand the different learning styles that learners have, understand their own learning style, and be aware and be conscious of when they are paying too much attention to that particular learning style over the others. So, if I like pictures, I have to be conscious of overuse of pictures, picture books, anything that just stimulates the visual, and understand there are other students who are not particularly tended in that direction, who are not particularly very comfortable with that. And bringing all of this together, the audio, the figures, whatever else stimulates the students, bringing it together and helping to have an all-inclusive classroom. At, if this is achieved, we're leaving none. We're taking all along. We're saying, look, some may be fast, maybe fast enough to catch up with the bus. Some may need a little help to catch up with the bus, but we're not going to leave anybody at the point of takeoff. We're all going to get in, we're all going to coast along, we're all going to cruise the learning ride. I see Ugochi trying to come in and out of the show. We hope the connection is favorable this morning so that we can have other contributions to this topic. But please remember that as you join us, you can leave your comments, and we will take your comments and your questions as we go ahead. Another set of students that are easy to leave behind, or that are easy uh, to miss, are students who maybe have periodic health issues. They have times when maybe they have to be in the hospital, or they fall ill often. They just have these health issues that keep them out of school for a while. Um, how do we help them catch up when maybe it's close to an assessment and they have to be out of class? They have to be away for a while. How do they catch up? What extra measures can we put in place to help these kids? to help these students not to miss too much. Yes, of course, we know they're going to miss some, but not to miss too much. When it comes to their health, it's something they really do not have much control over. And at this point, maybe which one of the ladies was in, so we could talk about the aspect of female students, and they're having to cope with classes, especially during their periods. I hope one of them comes in on time, and then we can talk about that. How does this impact learning for female students? And understanding that some of these students start from maybe as early as primary 4, primary 5, and or that's grade 5, grade 6, and they're finding it a little difficult concentrating, focusing in class because of uh, all of the physiological changes going on in their bodies. At that moment when they're not they don't have 100% focus and concentration in class. What can a teacher do to help the students to uh, still be a part of the learning environment, to still be functional, to still be able to achieve the maximum that they can as students? This is another set of students that we can easily miss, or that can become burdensome for a teacher to carry along, or for well to take along with them on that journey. Okay, we have talked about students who are shy, who are withdrawn, who are, there are some who are even shy or withdrawn, or maybe not shy, but withdrawn not because of their personality, but because of issues that they're going through. So they feel, some are being verbally abused. And so they feel, look, there's nothing about me. There's nothing I have to contribute. Nobody wants me. Nobody wants to listen to me. Nobody wants to hear me. I don't have. I'm just here. They're just they're just there in the classroom, and most of what is said is going over their head. They're just taking time, and there they are. Some of them may, out of just, well, maybe they don't want attention on them. They just, okay, I put in my best, I just get the grades and move on. But really, they are not benefiting fully from the classroom environment or from the learning environment. Are we asking too much of teachers? Are we asking them uh, to do too much in carrying these students along? What if there is a teacher who has had these issues themselves, and here they are facing students who have the same issues? They haven't been able to walk through this. They just coasted through, and well, they were able to make it through, but not really understand how this concept works, or how help can be rendered. Um, how, what role does school management now play in this, in ensuring that the students are getting the best, teachers are not overworked, and that the we can still have results of a robust academic experience for the students? So welcome back, Sister Chick. I hope you can hear me now.
I can hear you clearly now. Thank you so much, Fee.
Your network it seems to be leaving itself behind this morning.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Can you hear
Yes,
me,
I can
Fee?
hear you now. Are you there?
Okay. Um, I hope
It's
this is
it's
much
fading
better.
in and out, but I can hear you.
Interesting.
So maybe it's not so much of a fading, or maybe it's more of a lag because I hear you responding, but not in real time. So, but since we can hear you, I would like to get your opinion on the topic we are treating this morning. Okay.
Be a combination of factors to, and the school management can be part of it, starting from how do you teachers to ensure that they can cater to the number of student learners that you have in school. You do not have enough staff to cater for them. Now that staff is going to try to do their best, but they're not going to get, they would probably move with the students who learn faster, or the students who learn faster, or the first set that that get their attention, as opposed to every learner. And all children, as long as they are within that school, opportunity to learn. They all deserve that level playing ground. So if already we do not have enough staff to cater for that, then it means that some children are going to slip in between the cracks. Also, taking into the classroom, the teachers themselves, they've got to be open-minded to see how to carry everybody along. Sometimes there is a temptation to want to move with the sharp students, you know, the ones that are picking it up quickly, and then some others will be left behind, forgetting that different children in a different method class who have some form of learning development issues. And so if the teacher is not someone who is willing to go the extra mile, or who is not detail oriented, you might miss out on this important leave some children behind. Do you see? So it's really important that teachers are also deliberate, in class. And then, of course, if we say leaving no learner behind, I can also see how a parent can also play a part, right? If you keep checking your child's homework and you are seeing there is a lag, your child is not keeping up with the school, go and say, okay, I think my child can perform up to this level. Is there a way something can be done so that my child is performing at this level? I really do not understand why my child is performing at this level. Is there a way something can be done? Imagine that somehow the school administration have already messed up. Maybe we do not have enough teachers, or the class size is really large, or maybe the teacher on their own hand is messing up. They are not really paying attention to details. So maybe they've missed out on some students. The last should I say, opportunity to influence this can come from the parent. So a parent who is observant of their child's academic track record, or who does close follow-up, with what's going on, can see that, okay, my child is not doing as well. Is there something that can be done so that my child is also not left behind? So you can see that we need all these players, to work together to ensure that no child is left behind.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Oguchi. We need all players to ensure that no child is left behind. And good morning, Mrs. Adewobi.
Good morning.
Good
Good
morning,
morning,
Mrs.
everyone.
Adams.
Good, good morning, Safety Check. Good morning. Schools are back, so we're back to our routines and waking up early.
Yeah,
Being, being
yes.
ready. um, so I've been listening to
And
this.
this term we're taking all. We're taking all of them along. We're leaving none behind. I think it's a good one for us to start a new term with, really.
I mean, it was really in Obama's time that they started the campaign, and he put
Yes.
in the No Child Left Behind. And the whole idea was just how do we make major reforms in the education sector whereby no child is left behind in school. So even those, apart from enrollment, it was also ensuring that children were getting the required quality of education at all levels. And honestly, it's something that we should start the term with. We know that with the pandemic, it's disrupted lot of things. I'm not even sure things will be back to normal. What we know as normal before the pandemic, before September. Right now, various schools in various states are operating different calendars. It will take till September before we, get together. We're back unified, so to speak. I know that while some schools opened last week, some are open this week, some will open next week. A lot of the public schools were just closing, so they most likely will not be opening till maybe the first week in May. Um, that's just saying the general trend. Then not to talk about what has happened in the last 1 year. Where have they been in terms of their education, in terms of what they've learned, in terms of where they should be? Some people are saying maybe the year should be repeated. Repeated in the sense that assume that nothing was achieved. And let's all start again. So it might seem like that's a worst case scenario, but really evaluating what was achieved from online, from rushing the term, from a lot that happened, is something for concern. Then when you just think of the insecurities happening in the north, whereby a lot of people, even if the pandemic had not made them drop their kids out, a bit of some of the insecurities that are currently happening in the north. Because I was thinking about it as I was coming to school, coming after I dropped my kids off, to say, if I was there around the areas where all these things were happening, my child would be homeschooling, my child would be homeschooling. And that's if I can homeschool. If I can't homeschool, I'll just say she come and sit at home. So I think in the country generally, when we look at the leave no child behind, it's even where to start from before we then come and talk about inclusion for those with special needs. So I can imagine that the last year had been tough for those with special needs. A lot of them might not have been able to participate with online and remote working. Their parents would have had a tough year. So things are just getting back. So that's also another thing. So that's when we look at this whole leave no child behind, it's easy to have looked at before the pandemic. Now that the pandemic has, so to speak, caused a disruption in what was normal, the question is where are we starting from? Where's our ground zero that we are starting from? So those are just the thoughts going through my head, really. Back to you. I don't know if the beep is coming from.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I was out for a bit. Thank you so much for that. I was going to come to the issue of insecurity and how it would affect learners in fact, it's not really about the northern part of the country now alone. There is insecurity in different levels, in different forms, almost all over the country. And when we consider the disruption that came with COVID-19, and then this, in areas where you're still trying to get parents to agree to send their children to school with incentives and all of that, and then we have the we have the disruption of COVID, we have insecurity, we have maybe it's in their areas, maybe localized violence, and the parents just feel, look, you're better off staying with me at home, or you're better off going with me to the shop. Or is there any way that is there, okay, so my what I'm thinking is, what kind of assurance or what kind of inclusion can be extended to children in this kind of situation?
Okay.
I don't even know where to start.
First of all,
Assurance,
it's a serious issue because
assurance. Hey.
Assurance may be a big one, but how can we carry them along?
Okay, safety chick was about to say something. Let me let safety chick start.
Yeah.
okay, so this is a big problem because if parents are not sure that their child is safe in school, they would say, just stay home with me so that I can be seeing you regularly. At least I know that you are here. If something wants to happen, it's under my nose, it's going to happen, right? And it shouldn't be. Education should never be associated with fear. Education should not be associated with terror. It shouldn't be that when you think of going to school, you're like, oh my God, what if they come and kidnap today? Or what if some bandits show up in school and all this sort of stuff? No, it shouldn't be.
Safety chick, we know it shouldn't be, but
But
we are saying that
us
realities. So what
to
do you advise?
have,
Okay, since
if
her network
it,
is taking
the
her in
only
and out.
way you can get assurance, I
Okay.
that as an introduction. I'm actually going to, the recommendation is that schools might need to have their own security systems
Mm.
and not just any kind of security, like a proper security system. I know that yes, many times we want to rely on the system, security loopholes. We've had how many cases who have been taken away. Then that means you've security that can do the job. Now, is this going to cost? Yes, it's going to cost. And that is why this conversation would need to be had with you. And the only reason why introducing you, the parent, you would feel safer if we put this in place so that everybody now brainstorms. Okay, so how are we going to subsidize this cost? Because it will be very bad if it is only the school that is carrying the cost. It will also be very bad if it's only the parent that is carrying the cost. And so that is why a conversation must be had between the teachers, the parent, and the school management. And patients even see how to manage it. We can't rely on the security around that can do the job. Now, how can we subsidize it so that the weight is not on just one party? And you see that in the course of see that okay, it's either a group of parents might decide to sort it out, or might even have parents who have necessary networks that can help you to get such services at a reduced cost. The point I'm trying to make here is that we have to begin to think of extra security, but more importantly, we also have to see how to reduce the cost. Because if the school just levies it on the parents, the parents are going to, they'll be thrown off balance. Like, no, we don't want supposed to protect. Got to see how to bring in our own on any part. I'm done, Fim.
All right. Thank you, Safety Chick. Even though we didn't hear you in a continuous stretch, but we were able to make out what you were saying, that um, there's a need for schools to have better security, and that the cost should be borne by both the school and the parents, because parents want their children safe, and the school also, good safety is for everybody. So if both the parents and the school can come together to to have proper security for their children, then at least they are assured that while they are within the school premises, they are safe. Okay, so that's insecurity and its effect on education. Let's look at. I'm glad that you're here and that we all here are ladies, and the aspect of the for female students from as early, some of them as early as maybe grade 4, grade 5, they already started their period, and for some of them, it's how we know how it can be. And then there's this child in school that maybe for every time of the month, they really, some of them have to leave school, some of them the distraction is so much, maybe the pains and all of that. What is there anything that the school can do to help female students in this regard? It goes beyond, it also goes into other areas, but for let's talk about education in particular, and for students in school where this is a distraction for them, where it's it's a need, it's something that is part of it's not something they can do without, but it's interfering with their participation and their full involvement in academics. What is the role of the school in this?
Well,
There is a limit to what a school can do.
go ahead, Chick.
Please go ahead.
Okay, Ms. Ade will say, please go first.
I wanted to say that, some of the things I feel that schools can do is one, that education and awareness. Two is, because that's really the important thing. I mean, it's not it's an initial shock, but once you get over it, it's just a part of you that will be with you for a long, long time. So you need to know how to adjust. So what I would advise is really this straight talk with the children. I think another thing is also ensuring that the school has extra of those facilities, the pads and all that. It could either be for sale if the school can afford it, and it's something that they have, so that the ladies are comfortable with that, and just talk to them also about disposal. I feel that in terms of, usually on the onset of it, most people don't start having all those pains. It's usually after you've done it for a while, when and those pains are usually triggered by too much sweet. So I think it's also to let them know how to manage the pain, to minimize it affecting them to the extent that they have to be absent in school. So a lot of it is education, and I think it's good to start early. For those that start in primary school, it's good to start early as they get to year 5.
She's out. Uh,
Hello, I don't know whether it was my internet.
so,
Okay, more schools start to talk about hygiene as you approach puberty, because you find out that it's also the same thing about that's the time they need to start using antiperspirant, deodorant, or things like that. So it's a conversation they typically should have with them. Start having with both boys and girls, because that's, you really need to have the two-sided conversation. Both boys
Can
and
you
girls.
still hear me?
yes,
Yeah.
Safety Chick. Thank you. Yes, Safety Chick, we can hear you.
Okay. Was buffering on Tidadeusis side.
Safety Chick, I thought you want to say something, so I just.
hearing. So I was just checking that it wasn't just me, that you could hear me.
Oh, we can hear you now loud and clear. Just go ahead.
Okay, so in addition to what that they will see as mentioned, people, individuals working in the area of period poverty they've been talking about, and that's the fact about making sanitary pads free. And that's because the rationale is that if condoms are given for free to reduce the risk of risky behavior in sexual intercourse and reducing STDs and HIV and all that, it's actually like a full-blown campaign where even when you go for youth, because they are trying to, should I say, prevent something. Now, if we can do that for condoms, how much more for menstrual cycle that is experienced monthly? For sure, we know that every month women are going to experience it, and most especially the fact that they are young girls in underserved communities. So very recently, I heard about a case that in Kenya, I think Kenya, there was a there was a situation where, and they will say it's their own racket. And so because many of these girls were coming from low income backgrounds and needed money so they would, in exchange to buy sanitary pads. So you see, here it might be slightly different, but that tells you the reality of this menstrual cycle things about education. Partner with, say, organizations, NGOs that give out menstrual kits for free to children, because we do have organizations like that, so that we can always have a supply that can help getting their own part. Because sometimes the reason some girls do not turn up for school is because it's either they are using cloth or they are using toilet roll. And so because they are using that, and it's risky, they could get stained in school. So they would rather just use that management at home to partner with NGO, where I know that, okay, every month I'm able to get a pack of pad to sort this out, so that I'm able to use a comfortable pad and still show up in school. So it balances the education that they'll be given, how to ensure that maybe they do not have pain, how to stay clean and maintain hygiene. But then they also have the tools so that they are still able to show up in school, and that's not an excuse for them not to show up. So I think that schools should begin to think creatively, how can they support? And I know that we don't really have too many organizations like that are doing, but these are the kind of things that should be supported, so that we do not leave any girl behind, basically.
Thank you, Safety Chief. We do not leave any girl behind. We do not leave any child behind because of the things that are beyond their control. So, as we round off this morning, what would your parting shots be on carrying children along? And maybe now, including also, what would you say to teachers, maybe to help them in carrying their students along? Who's going first?
So I'll just say that it should be intentional. Um, I think just being intentional and deliberate, because once we are intentional and deliberate about a lot of things, we're going to see where we are, knowing that it exists. So once we are able to identify those loopholes, the timing as well as others is still carried along. I think that the child is not also largely braid. If we ignore certain things, we may not even know that it is causing a problem that can snowball into something big. But if we are observant, if we're intentional,
we're not hearing Ugochi very well, but she's talked about being intentional, being deliberate. Thank you, Ugochi. And so they will say, let's have your parting shot for us this morning.
My parting shot is this: that it's interesting that it's education you need to eradicate this problem. That's what's so interesting, because the more the people in the area where you have a lot of the kidnapping, terrorism going on, the more educated they are, the occurrence reduces. Because people are now more aware. Same thing with if people children have special needs and they're not in school, or for one reason or the other during their periods they're not in school, the solution to all of it is still this education. So it's funny that without it, it suffers. With it, it's necessary to also overcome the other things. So it just also shows us that we need to use both formal and informal methods to educate. If you say, oh, you only do the formal method, which is when people come to school, you would educate them, then you miss out a whole group of people that do not come. And I think for me, that's really what the No Child Left Behind is really all about. Whether we're using the formal means or we're using the informal means, the important thing is how do we reach out to these children. So they might not all be able to come to school. They might be out there in the mosque and do things. They are there in their community. What can we do to create this awareness and bring this education to them, to their footsteps? So I think when I think of behind, for me, it's how do we become more creative in educating the African child, both inside the classroom and outside the classroom. And if we're doing reforms in that area, is how do we extend it such that the child, that there's some children that they have to go to with their parents to the market, at their shops, but you're saying what are the creative ways that we can still reach them wherever they are. So for me, that's really my parting shot.
Thank you very much for that. And that is our bit this morning. We will be signing off with our usual sign off. Um, thank you so much, everybody, for being here. And on that note, we say that let's take it off, ladies.
It's always a great morning on the Good
It's
Morning.
always a great morning on the Good Morning Education Show.